Welcome to Blender Game Master, where beginners become pros. Today I'm going to be doing a really basic introductory class, an introduction to just how to get Blender, how to install Blender, something for the absolute beginner. So we start by going to Blender, searching for Blender, going to blender.org. And here we want to download the newest Blender. You just click on this, you pick out your operating system, and 64-bit or 32-bit. Of course, I went to Linux and I picked out 64-bit. I've already done that, so I won't bother doing it again. Once that's done, you need to go to your downloads, and you'll find Blender in the downloads. Right here is the test build. It's for people to help test 2.75. We're currently running 2.74. There's a really good chance that your system does not have an updated version. It should be 2.74 is what you want to be running. If you're running like Ubuntu or Sauvignon like I run, then there's a really good chance that you have an old version of Blender, and there's no reason to do that. Just download the new version, click extract. In this case I put them all here in a place called programs. I click OK, but I've already done that also. So that unpacks it and puts it into my programs file. And here you see your different versions of Blender. Here's 2.75, and the important file here really is Blender. That's the one that needs to be run. And to run that, we'll go here. I'm going to open a new tab, and just change directories. Blender, that's with a small b, Blender, and we'll go to 7.5, which is the newest one. Okay, when we're there, we type /Blender and hit enter, and then it pops up your nice brand new Blender, as updated as it can possibly be. What you're seeing here is my default screen, the normal load factory settings. Here's the normally default factory settings screen, and this is what you should see when it comes up. And here we have the viewport, where you can see there's a cube here in the middle. There are these little things, and you can see it down here. We got Z is blue, Y is green, and X is red. So if you click on this and you pull it, it'll go along that axis. Press escape and it'll go back to where it was. So that's the basic interface. And of course you've also got the stripes here and a grid. Each one of these grid marks, if you look on the top, it's 2 by 2. So each one of these by default is a meter. And to turn on meters, we go to we go to scene and click on metric. I suggest everybody does this right away. Just leave it in metric at all times. And then we also in the scene have a light. In this case, we click on the light, and this is a left click, by the way. Oh, sorry, it's not left click. Every other program in the world would be left click. In Blender, it's a right click. This is the camera, and you can see here's a picture of a camera. If I click on the light, there's a picture of a light. If we go here, you can see the type of light we have. Maybe we want to make it a sunlight, because that's easier. It just is a basic light like the sun, and it looks good overall. We also might want to go to world, and here we have the different types of skies. Notice we're in Blender render. Almost everybody these days is working in cycles render. So I click on cycles to bring it to cycles render, and now under world, use nodes, and we want a background, and we want that background to have a sky, because sky looks better, of course. It's pretty simple. So now we have it set to sky. And you're saying, well, there's no sky there. But if I press Z, I haven't turned it on yet. Render, viewport shading, render. It's how it shades everything. You can see there's this nice automatic sky here with the sun showing the light down. Going back to the solid mode, you can see the sun coming down here at this angle. If you rotate it around, you can see which way the sun is pointing. It's important because that dictates your shadows. If we press T, we get this transforms menu here, and there are little sub tabs on the side for physics, animation, grease pencil, tools. The middle mouse button, if you roll it, zooms you in and out. And the left button moves this 3D pointer. The 3D pointer is where things are going to happen. So if I put that here, and you can see it's also got to do, this is 3D, so you got to do it in all directions, because it only sets it in the plane of the viewport. So like we view from the top by pressing number pad 7 straight above, then we're exactly looking down from the z-axis, straight down the z-axis. If we press 5, number key 5, it changes it to perspective mode. It's a little hard to see, but if we go here, you can see it's going to perspective or not perspective. And if you press the number pad 1 key, you can see down here we've got Z and X. If I press number pad 3 key, you have the Y and X. And if I press the 7 key, you get the Y and X. So those are 3 easy ways to set this up. So if you want this pretty much perfect, this 3D cursor, you can set it there in this plane, and then go to, like, I pressed the 1 key, and then we can press it so it's exactly perfect in this plane. We can check it here, and we're happy with that. So now if we press Shift A, we can add a new shape. For example, a UV sphere. And then we can press G to grab it, and we can move it somewhere. If we press the F or the number pad 5 key, you can see we're no longer in perspective mode, which is often easier for modeling it in the first few seconds. Often through the whole project I find it easier, but you know, I switch back and forth. Okay, so this is your basic Blender. If you press the 0 key numpad, you see it through the camera. If you then press F12, it will render your picture. Rendering is where it converts it from numbers into an actual photographic-like image. It's not too beautiful because we haven't really done much yet. If you press the N key, you get a bunch of other options. And one of the ones that's really nice here is under Shading, Matcap. Matcap is a temporary color that you can give to things. And I kind of like this red. It really lets you see the shadows and the lines of your geometry. This is an automatic shader. However, if you render, you'll see that it's still in the old colors. The old colors are set by going here. This is your material. And you can see these things don't actually have any materials on them. If we go to rendered, you can see there's no material. If we click new, you get a diffuse material. It's your basic material, and you can change it, the color here. And you also can change how rough it is, which won't really matter much with diffuse, because roughness 0 is normal things, and roughness 1 is paper, and things are really flat, like cement. But if you go to glossy, and now I'm going to click over here smooth shading. So it makes it look like a mirror ball now. So if we change this, you can see that it becomes flatter and flatter, like less and less shiny. It's a very important setting. And often we'll mix these, but we'll get into that in more advanced tutorials. So that gives you a basic thing. Now if you press F12 and render it again, you can see you've got a nice shiny ball there. Up here we have the scene and all your objects. I'm going to click back to solid mode, and if we click an object here, you can see that it's selecting it by this orange line around it. It's been selected. We can also right click the objects to select them, and the 3 main keys you're going to use for objects is grab, which allows you to move it, S, which allows you to scale it, and R, which allows you to rotate it. And I'm clicking right click to free that without setting it. If I click R and rotate it and left click it, it stays in position. Control Z is an undo. So now I'm going to go to options because this basic setting I don't like. So we go to user preferences, and it brings up this nice big user preferences menu, and there's a ton of things in here and a lot to learn. I'm just going to go over the very basics. I like zoom to mouse position. I like rotate around selection. You can play with it yourself and see. It's just how the 3D viewport handles zooming and rotation. In editing, the global undo steps 32. I don't like only having 32 undos, so I move that all the way up to 256. The only reason not to do that is that you might run out of memory. If your computer is old or doesn't have a lot of memory, you might want to be very careful there. The rest of this I just leave as it is. Now inputs. Emulate 3-button mouse is good for people with Apple because they've got that strange mouse with only one button on it. Here's again different ways of turning the 3D view. Walk and fly are ways that you can move through your scene. If you have like a city and you want to explore it, you can walk around in it just like in a 3D first-person shooter. It's a very nice feature. Everything else here you can pretty much forget. It's all pretty nice. Now add-ons. This is hugely important. There are a ton of add-ons that I always turn on. Extra objects is one. I like the ivy generator, but it's just for growing ivy on shapes. Sapling for growing trees. Ant landscape. Ant landscape for this is for making land, like mountains and stuff. Bolt factory, extra objects. You guys might not want to turn on all of these things, but this is just my default thing. I like to work with GIMP, although it's got a warning here, which means some things might be broken. Import images as planes, super important. This allows you to import a movie or a photo, and it'll make a square to set it on that's exactly the right size for that object. It's way easier. It's a great thing. This is kind of interesting. OpenStreetMaps allows you to import street maps from the OpenStreetMap project, and then you can build cities really quickly. It's quite cool if you're into making cities. Make human, of course, is great for making humans. What else do we have here? Scalable vector format. This is good for if you know what it is, you know what it is. Don't worry about it. It's unlimited zoom in and out is the basic reason to use it. I like the mesh tools. I like the loop tools and these tools. Oh, the node wrangler is great. You gotta have that. You should probably read the manual too on that one. And you can get that by just clicking on the triangle and go to documentation. This is for adding chains if you want to make jewelry or whatever scene with it. Yeah. This makes clouds. I don't use that very often. Cell fracture breaks things up. If you want to do explosions, that can be important. Again, fracture tools for breaking things. This is for drawing on the screen in 2D and then setting objects where you drew. Using the grease pen. Cycles engine should be turned on. It's the new 3D render engine. Rigify is a great tool if you're rigging a lot of characters. It's extremely important if you're doing like 100 characters and they're all the same. It'll keep them consistent. That's a good thing. And the last thing, pie menus. This is new and I love pie menus. So definitely turn that on. Okay, so back up to the top. Themes. The default theme is okay. I happen to like the science theme. under presets. Where is it? There it is, Science Lab. I think it's prettier. But you, of course, can just play with them or make your own. This is where everything is saved. The one thing to be aware of is temp. Most of your renders and images you create are going to go to the temp library, which is okay. But the thing is that most computers, when they reboot, they erase the temp library, or the temp folder. And that could erase your images. Say you're rendering a film and you have thousands of rendered images there. It's been running for 6 hours and the computer overheats and crashes. It reboots and erases all the work that's gone before. That's a bad thing. So you might want to change this to a directory that isn't erased. Just be aware it can fill up quickly, and you might want to yourself be sure that it's emptied once in a while. I like thumbnails. I want to see thumbnails, so I turn that on. This is how many versions. So if you save it, it has your current version, and then you work on it and you save it again, then it'll save your current version, but the older version will then be moved to blend.1. So if you set this to like 3, then you can have 3 different times you've saved, and each of the older versions of your save will be saved. That can be important if something crashes, or you did something stupid and you need to go back a few steps, and your undo isn't enough to save you. How often it auto-saves? Every 2 minutes is usually okay. You can lose 2 minutes of work. Put your name here so that your work is signed a little bit. Okay, and then to system. This is super important. Turn on QData and pick out your graphics card. If this isn't turned on, your computer is not going to be, or Blender won't be using your great graphics card that you paid hundreds of dollars for. So obviously, you want that on. Everything else here, I think I leave the way it is. Except here, prefetch. How many frames that your visual editor gets ahead of time. And if you have a lot of computer memory, like I do, turn this up a lot. That way you can load in every single frame and the computer won't slow down, you won't have to wait for load times, it just stays in memory. If your computer doesn't have any memory, obviously that won't work for you. With Blender, with any art program, it's great to have a computer that has the maximum memory and the fastest processor and the fastest graphics card. Of course, speed, money, money, money. That's just how the computer world is. And then save your settings. Close this file, and now you have a Blender all ready to go. Only last step I would say is that you also have to come over here, and right now it's set to CPU. So if I go to, I'm going to press Z, move to render, and let go of Z. And that's a way, this is the Pi mode thing I told you to turn on. It lets you switch modes very quickly. Tab lets you change to edit mode, and or back to object mode. And Z key lets you change the way things are drawn. So here's tab, going to edit mode, you can see it. You can see all the vertex and the lines and the faces of the object here. Yeah. So anything else? Oh yeah. Back to Z key, I was about to say in the first place. So your render mode, you can see how quickly that rendered. It's pretty quick, but it's not quick enough. If you want it to be much faster, you go to CPU. Now watch, I move, boom, done. Up here it shows you how many steps. To make this easier to show you, I'll go down here to sampling. Right here it says preview 10. We'll just make this to 100, 102, whatever, doesn't matter. You can see, I move this, goes to 102 samples pretty quick. If I put this on CPU and move it, now look how long it takes to get to 100. You also want to be sure to buy NVIDIA graphics cards for Blender, because that's what Blender loves. I have a 580, GTX 580 from NVIDIA. That's a great, fairly cheap graphics card. Of course, if you're rich, get 3 or 4 Titans and shove them into your box. Then you'll, and a giant cooling fan. But now you can see this is so much faster. It's way better. The other thing here is when it renders, this is how many cycles it goes through. In each cycle, your picture gets more and more crisp. And here is the render when you press F12. How many it'll do? 10. And this is preview. I'm doing 100. So obviously here we probably want to put something like 2,000. It might take an hour to render though at 2,000. So beware of that. The more samples, the longer it's going to take. And light paths is the light is bouncing all over, from the camera to the object, off a wall to the light. And if you do full global illumination, you can see that it's bouncing a whole lot of times, 128. If I set it down to like faster, a preset that I made, everything's at 1. This is just super fast. Like you can see up here, almost instantaneously to 100. If I set this to full global illumination and move it, it's going slower. You don't notice it going much slower because my scene is so simple, but if it were complex, you'd see a real difference. What else is there to tell you? There are different views for different default views. We're in default, but if say you wanted to do video editing, we can go to the video editor. Or if you wanted to do game programming, go to the game programming editor. Compositing, where it's like stacking pieces of glass on top of each other and blurring different levels, layers, I guess you'd call it in a Photoshop type of thing. UV editing, this is where we're going to put color and paste it onto our cube. Animation is obvious, we're animate a walking thing or something. If you really just want to see your object, there's a big view. Zoom in and get lots of detail on your object. But for beginner, default is the place to be. If you're working on different scenes in a movie, like one is a space scene and the next is in a spaceship, then you can have different scenes by just clicking plus, and then you can click on here and rename them. Also over here, if you right click on something, you can delete it, or you can rename it, or things like that. What else is there to tell you? This here is all your information about rendering, all your settings. This is all the information about your layers, your render layers. This is all the information about your scene. This is probably, metric is probably the most important thing here. Color management can be fun. You can change what it looks like using different types of film and whatnot. I think that's in the, where is that? Yeah, here it is. So like if you're into Kodachrome, Ektachrome, or whatever, you can make it look like that. The world is setting up the way the world looks. The background, basically. This is like right now I have the cube selected. Go to solid so you can see that more easily. The cube is selected. Oh, we're in edit mode also. We'll go to object mode. And here's all the like the location and the rotation. It's also up here, the location and rotation. Same thing. A bunch of information about the object. Won't get too into detail. These are constraints that mostly has to do with animation. These are all the different ways you can modify it. Like if we have an array, we'll make this a little bigger so you can see that it's duplicating them over and over again, which can be a really nice way to model. And there are just a whole lot of modifiers. Array, bevel, subdivision are ones you might want to read about on the internet. As a beginner, probably the most important three. Mirror is also quite important. Yeah, that's about all that's important there. This is just some stuff about painting and shapes and colors on the surface. This is where you set up your materials. This one is important, but we're not going to get into that this time. This is textures. This one is, if you click new, you get particle settings. It allows you to grow hair or make explosions, blow things up with sparks all over. And this is all your physics. Here's your timeline. Again, this is for animation. We're on frame 1. It ends at frame 250. And you can go through it. Oh, see, I've turned on the particles. You can see the particles coming out there. So this is for, and you click here, it'll play. Click here, it goes back to the beginning. Yeah, also, at the very beginning, be sure to save your file, because if you don't save it and you work for 3 hours and the computer crashes, you've lost it. If you're using textures from photographs and stuff, I always click automatically pack into the blend, because if you don't pack them into the blend, they'll be like, say you'll link to them in some other file, and then one day you'll clean up your computer and you'll move your blend file somewhere else, and then the links will no longer be valid, and then that blend is pretty much trashed, or you've got to go and find where you stuffed all the pictures and redo all the links. So packing is a great thing. There's also other options: Blender Render, Game Render, Cycles. Cycles is where most people want to start. Yeah, that's a good intro. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please ask. I'll answer them as soon as I can. Please also spread the word, the normal like and share and whatever, all those things you do, tweet. Thanks. Have a great day.